We're pleased to be joined in studio by Republican candidate for the 4th District for the U.S. House of Representatives, Monique Despain. Thanks for coming up to our studio.
Thank you for having me, Brandon.
Well, obviously the primary is about a month away, and you have one Republican challenger in the primary, but I know you're already somewhat looking ahead to November in the general election, where you hope to unseat our current Congresswoman Val Hoyle. And I want to start with the issue that is top of mind for Oregonians year in and year out, and that's homelessness. Here in Lane County, affordable housing's limited, rent is sky high, and there's many people still living on the streets year round. You get elected in November and sworn in January. How do you approach this issue as quickly as you can?
I've been out all over the district, the 4th District, and I just want to say, you probably know this, but a lot of people don't know that Eugene has the highest homelessness rate per capita of any city in the country, and that's just not acceptable. It's a crisis, for sure. I have been working on these local issues in my job at the law firm of Kamerman as an attorney there, and at Common Sense for Oregon, developing public policy to address these public safety issues, and they are public safety issues. All of these things lead to an increase in crime and overwhelming law enforcement. But all of that, because I am applying for a federal position to be Oregon's Congresswoman in the 4th District, a federal lawmaker, but all of these issues that we experience in the street are fueled by that open border. The evidence is overwhelming of that, and so that's how I can make a difference in Congress. I stand firmly on the notion that national security is paramount. It's a primary function of the federal government and of those Congress people in Congress, and we have a Congresswoman in Val Hoyle who literally wants to keep the border open. So that's the difference Oregonians will get with me, is that's my first order of business, is to secure our border.
And make that connection for me, because I know that border security, an essential tenet of your campaign. How does it fuel some of these problems that maybe the constituents don't make that connection of the border versus homelessness and further issues than that?
Well, we rely on the media to tell the stories. And so you have reported actually my public safety day out in Coos Bay, where I met with law enforcement, the Sheriff Fabrizio of Coos County. He tells the stories of the cartel presence in the county. I always forget the name of that, the one cartel that's there, which indicates to me they're powerful enough that there's only one cartel that owns our Coos County. But I talked to law enforcement directly. They are doing cartel busts. They are discovering slavery in our district. So, and they're overwhelmed addressing these things. While we want law enforcement, we want 911 response for just the, I hate to say the regular kind of crimes we have in our communities. We citizens can't be tended to because our law enforcement is overwhelmed. They're being defunded at the same time that we have an open border that's just fueling the lawlessness. Literally cartels, drug trafficking, human trafficking, slavery. We really are experiencing this, and there are federal dollars being spent to tamp it down. Problem is, we don't have the policies in place to secure the border.
What are those policies that you'd like to see in place?
Well, I have a lot more detail on my website, where I will work with anyone and introduce legislation week number 1 to secure the border by any means necessary. Physical barriers, cybersecurity, increasing border patrol, and then having laws with funded police and funded border patrol so that they can actually do it. Right now we have border patrol processing illegal immigrants into the country. Unacceptable.
Republicans in Washington blocked a bill in February that would have provided more funding than ever for border security. It was largely because it was tied to funding for Ukraine. I want to get back to border security, but because that continually becomes an issue with this federal aid overseas connected to border funding, do you support funding for Ukraine, and would you consider a bill that was tied to it?
Well, I would support single subject bills I think our national security is paramount and our border crisis is paramount, and I wish that was in a single bill. Now, the House, which the majority of the Republican House, did pass a bill in May. I think it was May, House Bill 2, I think. And I'm not in Congress yet, so I don't have all the details because I'm 100% campaigning. But the Senate is the one that the Democrat Senate is the one who's not cooperating and moving it along, I believe. But so single subject, single crisis, I would prefer. But as far as Ukraine, yes, we need to support Ukraine. We are doing it. Some things I disagree with, some I do. We have a national security interest in maintaining security in that part of the world as well. But I am adamantly opposed to blank checks with no end date and no exit strategy and just this open-ended flow of our tax dollars to secure another country's borders before our own is tended to.
Would that include Israel as well? Obviously,
yes.
funding for Israel.
Yeah. Totally support that Israel wants to secure their borders and keep their enemies at bay.
Should the U.S. send federal aid and weapons, military weapons, to Israel?
Again, to the extent, of course, that they need it, that they can succeed. They are an ally, and there may come a time where we need support at the rate we're going. So yes, I support that.
Obviously, though, a big part of working in Washington that I think if you ask most voters, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, they wish there was more compromise. They wish that the two sides would work together more. So how do you feel like your experience could help you bridge some of the gaps? Because you're running as a Republican, but you're running to be a U.S. Congresswoman.
And my campaign really is addressing the issues, which should be nonpartisan. It's really sad that we've come to a place where we can't agree on national security, keeping Americans safe, that we can't agree on getting back to a prosperous economy so that Americans, all age spectrums, aren't struggling financially in such an abundant country, right? And that we can't all agree that we want to hold our government, our federal government, all levels of government, accountable and reportable to the people, transparent and accountable. So consensus, of course, is important, and people are absolutely sick of career politicians, of the dysfunction that we just see, regardless of party. It just seems like perpetual fomenting of discord. And I come prepared because as an attorney, that's what I do. I solve problems for people. When they can't solve it, they come to a lawyer, and the good lawyers get you to resolution. And it's consensus, compromise. That's what I've been doing for decades. And also, just as an attorney, you wouldn't have just an endless blank check to stay in chaos and crisis, right? You have to produce results. And so as a private sector attorney, I've been doing that. And also as general counsel in different businesses, being able to handle a whole smorgasbord of issues, right? Having to spin up and be an expert in the moment to help resolve that issue. That's just, business people are familiar with that environment, and lawyers that support them are too. Now as a JAG, I've done all sorts of investigations and holding people accountable to do their job and to follow the rules and to met out the consequences when they aren't followed. And that's how you keep an orderly military, orderly community and society. So those tools have equipped me. And then I've told you before, I'm a mom of twins. So I can do conflict resolution quite effectively.
That's your best experience in conflict resolution.
You never know what's going to come up.
No. Let's bring it back home. You've been out to Coos Bay. Val Hoyle has come out in support of a container port on the coast, of an international container port project that was initiated by her predecessor, Peter DeFazio. Do you support federal funding for an international port of Coos Bay?
Yes, of course, and I support results. And that is what Oregonians are noticed. 50 years of Democrat rule with really little to no results. And so federal funding that produces no results is to me a blank check and a black hole that we're putting our tax dollars into. And I'm going to do everything I can to put an end to that and get some results. And so I've been out to the port too. And, I learned, I think they've gotten $100 million so far. That's really a drop. Those are crumbs. Oregon deserves more than crumbs. It's a $1 billion, it's a significant significant project. $100 million is, we throw $100 million into the Oregon public defender system just to get them by, right? Every 2 years. Extra on I'm getting off track here, but we need results. And when I learned about that $100 million that has come in over a couple decades, 10 million of that has been spent just on permitting and inspections. And that tells me that our elected representatives are disingenuous, because those barriers need to be removed. Not only on the port project, that's just an example of the disingenuous, here we've given some crumbs, some money, but there's no result. And then also with the housing crisis that you started out with. Again, disingenuous elected officials, because they're not removing the barriers to the goal. And the barriers in large part are government barriers, permitting, regulations. I hear, and I have the numbers for Eugene right now, but I've heard the numbers in Portland, $100,000 in permitting and inspections before you can spend a dime on actually building a new home. And that's government's responsibility. And those are the kinds of barriers I want to remove for the coastal communities, for so many projects out there.
Let's talk a little bit about abortion, because on the national scale, it's obviously been an issue that has been, that's influenced elections. For Oregonians, they consistently say it's since Roe v. Wade was overturned, one of the most important issues for them. They've repeatedly come out in support of legalizing abortion within the state of Oregon. But if a federal ban were to come before you as a congresswoman, a federal congresswoman, how would you vote on that?
I believe that the regulation of abortion is best left to the states. I believe and I concur with the holding of the Supreme Court that should be left to the state. I believe in life, and I believe in the U.S. Constitution, and there's nothing in the Constitution that supports that the federal government should get involved in this topic. And so I fully support the court's decision that it is left to the people who can elect their state representatives and express themselves that way, as they have in Oregon. It's very clear. And I will do nothing to return the regulation of abortion to the federal government, including the funding of abortion by the federal government. I would like to see the federal government produce some good results on their primary core functions. National security, let's get that right. And that is in the Constitution as a federal, the people have anointed the federal government to be responsible for national security for all American people. And I'd like to focus on that.
Since Val Hoyle was sworn in, there have been several speakers of the House, Mike Johnson, the most recent. Sometimes it looks to the people like there's dysfunction when we see these multiple votes and an inability for the party to come together, and very much saying it's on both sides. Democrats are having trouble coming together. Republicans are having trouble coming together. How would you approach this? How would you address this so that Americans feel like their government's working for them?
Right. Well, Americans are smart, and what they see is the truth. It is dysfunctional, and they're fed up with it. What we need to pay attention to is this opportunity we have in this district, in this seat, in this time, to not send the same career politician that keeps producing the same results. So, as I said, I described my background. I've been in conflicted environments my whole career with the goal, with stated goals, and with the goal to resolve the problem. And so the reason I want to go to Congress is for Oregonians to have a voice. And I'm not going to compromise Oregonians' voice. I'm not a career politician. I'm an outsider. I'm not going with any special interest. And that is a unique opportunity for Oregonians in many states across the country, to have a representative that really wants to go and talk and demand to be heard. And so, again, Americans need to be heard. Oregonians need to be heard on this national security issue, the open border that is fueling complete chaos in the state of Oregon. I will work with anybody. I did that is a nonpartisan issue to me. I will work with anyone in Congress who wants to preserve the safety of Americans in their homeland. Same with the economy, and same with government transparency. So that's what I will represent, and I think we have many in Congress that represent that same thing, and it's very important that we grow the majority of those who are not self-serving and are doing it for the righteous reason of raising the voice of the people that they represent.
It's also a presidential election. You may have heard from a couple people. The two parties have essentially already picked their nominees. Will you be voting for Donald Trump for president?
Well, that's a very direct question. I will not be voting for Joe Biden, that's for sure. And this isn't a presidential race for me. I'm campaigning for that congressional seat, which is a very important seat, all on its own, regardless of what the presidential outcome is. I have no control over who's going to be the president. None of us do, except, to vote. But this campaign, I am laser focused on securing that seat, because right now we have a congresswoman who is not representing the interests of Oregonians or the United States, or really our standing in the international forum.
You mentioned your military background. How has that prepared you to be a U.S. Congresswoman?
I learned how to be a leader, and back to the congressional dysfunction. Part of being an excellent leader is you've learned how to follow too. Now, not blindly, and not we do have an oath to the U.S. Constitution, not to another officer, not to a commander, and that has been the environment that I was incubated in and grew up in, and I really learned a lot. And have a healthy respect for it, because I had a dual civilian career, a legal career in the private sector at the same time. And that military experience does prepare us well for continuing to stand up for the U.S. Constitution and the founding principles of this nation and national security. I really feel like we have too many people in Congress who do not understand the military. They don't understand the threats on this planet to our well-being and to the future of this country, and how critical core function, right? I come prepared with that. I had a top secret clearance. I was a legal advisor to war fighters, to commanders, and I understand the threats.
You are an Oregonian. You've been traveling around during this campaign. When you've been speaking to people in this district, what do you think brings Oregonians together? We see a lot of division, but in my time, I feel like I speak to people and there's a lot more in common than we realize.
Yes.
What have you found that brings Oregonians
exactly
together?
That. I love going out and talking to people. I get to come out of I do fundraising calls all day. It's the worst part of campaigning. The money is coming in, and I love getting out to talk to people and meet with people. And I'm meeting with people with all parties. Democrats are concerned about the same things because they're human issues. Security, knowing that you're going to be able to make your house payment, that you're going to be able to afford to feed your family, and for the elderly to afford their medications, and they're on a fixed income. These are human issues that resonate with all parties. I have great conversations with Democrats where they don't like, the presidential choices either, but we talk about the issues, and they see there's a lot of power in this congressional seat that they can have an influence on without worrying about all these extraneous issues that we can't control. We have control over who our representative is in Congress, and what I'm seeing just across the board, people are sick of career politicians that are self-serving. We've done a lot of coverage on Val Hoyle. She's under federal investigation. She's engaged in a pay-to-play scheme with a criminal marijuana company. Those are her special interests, and people have seen that with a lot of politicians, and they're tired of that. I hear that across the board. Sick of career politicians that are not doing anything for the people back at home. That is what the founders intended by this whole arrangement, right? That we leave our communities for a brief time. I have signed a pledge for term limits, by the way. And I think that might lead to more effectiveness in lawmaking, limited time, and maybe get to some single subject bills. polls. That is what I hear. Democrats, non-affiliated, independent Republicans. We're tired of career politicians. We've got to end the dysfunction. We need to get our elected representatives working for the people on public safety, back to the homelessness we talked about, housing. These are unacceptable to everybody. The inflation, you know, we all are experiencing it regardless of what we're being told. The economy is suffering. Inflation is through the roof. And we all know it's because the government won't answer our questions about what they're doing with our money. This is resonating with all Oregonians.
And on that, you've certainly basically hit on this, but I'll ask you, why should Republicans support you in next month's primary?
I'm the only person who can defeat Val Hoyle, who is not representing Republicans, Democrats, independents, or non-affiliateds well at all, for all the reasons we just gave. I come prepared to the fight. I'm already taking it to Val Hoyle and holding her accountable for her misconduct. And I firmly believe she's disqualified herself from further service. And I've been doing work every single day and my team to raise awareness of the voters, because I feel it's my duty. If they knew the Val Hoyle, Congresswoman Val Hoyle, that they have representing them and how she's voting, and if they knew me, they would know I'm a better representative. And my website covers that at moniqueforcongress.com. A lot of media coverage that tells the story of how our Congresswoman is voting and how I would vote to the contrary. And I know that I represent the majority of Oregonians in many of these laws that are being enacted.
Primary first in May, then the general election in November. She's Monique Despain. Thanks so much.
Thank you.